are being recorded and you are broadcasting. You're ready to start your meeting.
Okay, thank you. Welcome, everybody. This is the regularly scheduled meeting of the Needham Historical Commission. Couple of preliminary matters. I am Gloria Grice, Chair of the Historical Commission, and permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. So members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Don Lankowitz.
Aye.
Rose Doherty.
Muted.
You can just raise your hand. I see you. Rick Hardy.
Aye.
Jeff Heller.
Aye.
Laura Dorfman.
Aye.
Gloria Grice, I'm here, and we are missing one member right now, Dylan Atia. Anticipated speakers on the agenda, please also respond in the affirmative. Nick Schiffer.
Aye.
Gina Bradley. Okay, everybody is present that needs to be present. This open meeting of the Needham Historical Commission is being conducted remotely as consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of this meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will not feature public comment. For this meeting on March 15th, 2021, the Needham Historical Commission is convening by Zoom app as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you, and also take care not to screen share your computer. The recording of this meeting is a public document, and anything that you broadcast may be captured for the recording. All supporting materials that have been provided for members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noticed. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. We are now going to turn to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and you state your name before speaking. And finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call. So the first item on tonight's agenda is a review of 1177 Central Avenue, known as the Ezra Mills House, built in 1844. And the purpose of this meeting is to determine whether the house is historically significant. I would like to introduce Gina Bradley, who is the owner of the house, and Nick Schiffer, who is the builder, who is going to be working on their proposed project. We're meeting tonight as required under the Needham Bylaw 2.11.5, which defines the procedure for review when a demolition permit has been requested for a house on the inventory of Needham Historic Places. A brief outline of the process for anyone watching the meeting who might not be familiar with it. When the owner of a house on the historic inventory seeks demolition permission, the building department notifies the Historical Commission, and the commission meets to review the request. This is a two-stage process. The first meeting, which is the meeting we have assembled for tonight, is to review the house's historic status. The commission then has the option to either decline further action or to seek a public hearing to determine whether the house be preferably preserved. If we do seek a public hearing, the owners produce a demolition plan for us to review, and we have 45 days from the submission of that plan to hold that hearing. For the hearing, we notify the abutters and any other interested parties, so they have the opportunity to attend and voice their opinion. If the house is deemed preferably preserved, the commission has the option to oppose a 6-month demolition delay on the project. The purpose of this delay is to give all parties time to find a possible alternative to demolition. If at any time during this process the situation changes, the commission has the option to withdraw the moratorium. Full details of this process can be found in the Needham bylaw section 2.11.5, and the bylaw is posted on the Town of Needham website on the documents page. I would now like to recognize Mr. Schiffer and Mrs. Bradley, who will provide some information about their project. So, Nick Schiffer.
How's it going, guys? Thank you for taking the time tonight. We did put together a quick packet of what we're proposing here, but that is correct. We are asking for a demolition permit to demolish the existing house and replace it with a new single-family home. We're cognizant of the fact that it's an important street to Needham, and we're taking the time to make sure that we're detailing something that is architecturally pleasing to the New England architecture. If I can share my screen, I can share quickly, just an outline of what we're looking to propose here, including a rough sketch elevation of the home. Am I able to do that? If I can get a thumbs up, maybe, just to make sure you guys can see that. Awesome. So this would be, we're calling this a Bradley residence. Gina Bradley is on this call as well. She's a homeowner. So looking at, we're looking at a traditional Tudor style home, incorporating New England traditional architecture. These are some of the inspiration photos that we've pulled in this design process, working with the architect. Skipping down to the site plan. This is the existing site on the left here, and on the right would be the proposed site. So generally keeping the house in its general location. We're not looking to make a lot of site changes. There's a lot of great trees on the site. All of those things have really been considered in this design. Gina's actually had someone out there to inspect the trees for their health to make sure that what we can save will be saved. And then looking from the street side, this is our concept elevation. Again, it is a single family home. We're building this for Gina and her family, for them to live here a very long time. So we're requesting that demolition permit in order for us to move forward with this.
Okay, and Ms. Bradley, did you have anything you wanted to add, or does that cover?
We just wanted to just clarify. So, and apologies, my husband was not able to be here tonight. He's just not available this evening. But we did know that the Ezra Mills house was on the inventory when we bought the land. I presume that after this meeting and within the 45 days, we'd be happy to welcome any of you to see the home if you want to see it. Alternatively, of course, we have lots of pictures. We don't have an ask for you tonight. We understand the process, and we understand the role that the inventory plays, and the important role. And so we're simply asking that when we get to that point, we would welcome a discussion about whether it is actually preferably preferred, especially given, unfortunately, the poor state of the home that's on the property now. But thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight, and we appreciate it.
We appreciate your coming. As I know, I discussed with Nick earlier, and I believe also you were included in the email. As I said, this is essentially an informational meeting, and that the public hearing that involves abutters and other interested parties would happen after the full proposal is made, if that does go forward in that way. Can one of you, I know the house has some fairly significant structural issues. Can one of you just walk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, I do have a few photos. I don't actually have photos of the structural concerns, but the general state of the home just wasn't kept up well. Looking at it as far as, whether or not it could be restored or whether we could save portions of it, it didn't really lend itself to be, prohibitive of that. What would be required, especially with the facade of the building, there would be a tremendous amount of damage done in trying to restore it. So that was something that we, considered early on, but, moving forward and looking towards, really, in my opinion, trying to beautify the street and really put something that does speak to the New England architecture. That's really the direction we started leaning towards, especially understanding the concerns of the overall structure.
I did circulate to the commission a copy of the email exchange that we had in the last couple of weeks. So they're up to date on that. A copy of, or the Zillow listing for the house, which did have a significant number of interior and exterior photographs, and also each commissioner has a copy of the historic listing. So does anybody, I'll start from the top then. Does anybody want to comment or have anything they want to say about this process, about this house?
Hello, can you hear me?
I think Laura had her hand up too.
Okay, I didn't know. My iPad is acting strangely. I only can see half of the people, and so I'm not getting any feedback in regards to this. So I'll wait my turn.
I don't know who you want. You're
Gloria,
muted.
please unmute yourself.
Go ahead, Laura.
Oh, okay. So here's my question without knowing much about this. Our job is straightforward. Our job is to determine whether the property should be preferably preserved. Correct?
Yes,
In other words,
but not tonight.
no,
In
I
fact,
understand that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
as just what I'm thinking is, as wonderful as whatever may be built may be, that it's not our concern. That's not our concern, really, because we have to make the determination of whether the home needs to stay as is, and whatever is to be built is really the concern of the building department. Do I have that right?
Yeah, it's not our role to vet the potential new design. It's just helpful as we go through our process to know what the owner has in mind. But no,
Thank
we
you.
won't
Right. So
judge the design or have further comment on what does go there ultimately.
Gloria, at this meeting, we determine whether or not it's historically significant, and at the next meeting, we make the vote whether or not it's professionally preferred. Right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay,
Did you have additional comments, Jeff?
I did.
Okay, go ahead.
Well,
Go on.
again, not judging by, your plans, but certainly I think they look impressive and exciting. And yeah, I heard you say that I'm a neighbor, by the way. I live on the corner of Great Plain Avenue and Central Avenue in one of the historic houses there. So I've always, and my children went to Newman. They're adults grown, and and so on. And I always sort of noticed that property as an ugly piece of property that was worthy of some improvement and development. Certainly I had fantasies and visions, but I won't go there, and I'm already sort of overwhelmed in that regard. So I'm familiar. When I first heard rumors of this, I paid more attention, walked around. So even hearing you notice the trees, I'm excited about that, because I think there's some magnificent specimens there. I was also early on was thinking, oh well, there's definitely going to be two houses here. There's the lot's large enough, I think by right to probably build two lots. So you're not even considering that.
No, we're not. And the trees were, I can't speak for Gina and Rob, but I think the trees were a big part
Yeah.
of why they got so excited about that property. So
Yeah.
we're certainly on your side there.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, beech trees are my favorite trees in all the world.
So can I call you Jeff? Is that okay? Are you Jeff?
Please do.
So
Please do.
we're still neighbors, by the way. We live on Great Plain right now. So you live right between us. We triangulate. So the beech tree, the big beech tree, just so you know, is the one that is actually diseased, which is a little bit sad. We had actually, before we even made the offer on the property, we had what I call our tree guys. We have this lovely couple that's just loves, trees and plants. And they came to assess all the trees because, as Nick said, the trees are part of the value of that land in my mind. Like you walk and you don't see trees a lot like that. The beech tree, unfortunately, is diseased, but the hemlock in the that split in the front can be cabled.
Yep.
That's okay.
Yep.
And then there is an American sweet gum, which is right to the left of it, right in the front of the property, which my tree guy was like, can I measure it? Because he said it's the largest sweet gum that he's ever seen outside of an arboretum. And he was like, I think he's like, it's here for like 150 years or something like that. So it's lovely.
I had to go look at.
I share your view of it. The site plan is we're going to put the house, assuming we can put a house. I don't want to get presumptive, but we would put a house around where the trees can shine as well, because it is a beautiful plot. So I'm glad that you like them too.
So Gloria, I would speak to the question around whether it's historically significant. From the history that you gave us, it was moved from where the tavern lot was, right? Originally, the original house, there, and then additions or modifications or so on. So it seems that the one historical part of the house, because it seems like the front of the house with the stuccoed part and the windows and the awnings and the porch is not original and not historic in any way, not in any way. And although I think it's a house that could probably be improved upon, knocked down in some ways, if someone had endless pockets and so forth, it's not really of a great design, usable space, and the one historic part of it, I think, is the what looks like an addition, sort of a room off of the kitchen that's at a different level. Also, it's kind of weird. So I mean, it seems to me that the one historical part doesn't even look historic, has no semblance to what it looked like when it was original. So in my view, I don't necessarily see it as it's only historically significant, in sort of name and narrative, not in what exists. So my vote would be that I would not find this structure historically significant.
Well, you don't have to vote quite yet. We'll do that. We'll do that afterward. But yes, I think you're correct. The part that was moved was, I think, the L from the tavern site. And the core of the house probably looked more similar to the old block in your house before the awnings and the porch and the much later additions were added. Okay, Rose, your turn.
Well, it occurs to me that we know that the L is the historic piece and we know that it was moved, but that's not in any of the documentation. It's kind of not complete. Am I missing something? Yes, the L was moved, but just when, and well, 1842 or 1869. But I find the documentation to be lacking, and I don't know whether the rest of you find the same kind of thing. I am dedicated to preserving old Needham structures, but it's hard to show what is old here and what needs to be preserved. I guess that's my question. What is old? What needs to be preserved, if anything?
You are correct. There is very little documentation on the structure. The movement of the L, I believe, is on the B form, but there's really only about 5-6 sentences of information on the B form for this house.
Right.
Don, do you have a comment?
No, other than the fact that the house is on the inventory and is something, the only thing that we can go on, I guess, at this point. So no other comment.
Thank you. Rick, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I certainly struggle as well. But the fact that it was on the original inventory back in 1985, they had a lot more choices of exit buildings to put on the inventory than they do today. And for whatever reason, the original folks who were volunteering to do this felt that it was significant enough to put it on the inventory. That is one. Second is obviously its age. We obviously talk about the fact that what's original, what isn't, and so forth. But we all know, at least in my tenure on the commission, it's hard to count the number of buildings on the inventory that are no longer with us. So these are becoming scarcer and scarcer. And I dare say, if we look to the future, they'll become more scarce because they will disappear. So I'm kind of sad and adverse that anything is disappearing today because, soon there will not be any. It's a concern to me that, here's something that is near the McIntosh Historic District, was once in the district, and another house of some age will be gone, and there'll soon be very few houses of that age left in the town. So,
Gloria, is it in the? It's not.
It's not, it's just outside the district, I believe. I think
It's not in the district at all.
that's what I
And
said.
I mean, and there's no, again, it's sort of like they moved, when you say they moved the L, it's like they moved the barn. That was part of the, it was probably the piece of the tavern that was, the storage or the barn or something like that, that they moved to get a start on building a house. And if they did build something more significant to the piece that still exists, I bet you it's gone. And the current housing piece, because that wasn't built in, the existing house was not built in 1800s, unless it was built in the late 1800s. There's hardwood floors in there. There's different style walls and structures than a historic colonial. So if there was something attached to that, the existing historic structure, I mean, again, we're talking about historically preserving a barn, and if there was something there that was attached to that, they probably leveled that to build a modern, maybe around the turn of the century or something, built a modern, addition. And they were the ones who knocked down the historically significant part of the structure. And for the life of me, I don't understand why they left the barn part and left it at a different level, which just complicates everything, unless they planned on putting it like a in-ground pool or something.
I believe the L is the part that survived the fire.
So they moved it at the time of the fire.
They moved it at the time, just after the fire. The tavern itself burned down.
Right.
The house that is on that corner is not the tavern. It's the house that was built after the tavern, a few years after the tavern burned down. I believe the L is the part that survived the fire. Wood was expensive at that point. Trees had been cut. There was not a lot of wood for planking readily available. So reusing structures and parts of structures was fairly common. So that does not necessarily imply that the L itself was valuable. It implies that the L itself was made out of valuable timber. If you look, for example, at the our place, the Mills house, which looks like an integrated front entry colonial, it's in fact made from at least 3 different structures, cobbled together from at least 3 different structures. This was fairly common at the time.
I know my house. I know my house was, built all, well, the Central Ave section was built at once, and then the close by Noyes Street was moved and attached. But I know my house was built at one time altogether, but they use wood from other houses or other barns. I can just, I can tell that beams and posts are notched where they don't need to be, because they took other wood to build the house. So I mean, it's no more different than knocking down a wing and reusing the wood, but it was so close that they moved the whole structure out of convenience. It was probably something they moved there so they could live in it while they built another house.
Or they had the opportunity to expand the house, and that was the best way to do it. Yeah, I mean, moving structures and parts of structures, it seems inexplicable to us, was fairly common then because of the scarcity of building timber and the expense. It was actually cheaper to do this.
Now, if they moved the whole tavern, and the tavern was moved as it existed on the corner over there, then I would say it was historically significant. But to move the barn, the garbage part of the house, I don't see any reason to consider it historically significant. And Rick, I don't think. I think we have to make judgments based on each individual site, and not pass on our our feelings about other losses that are historically significant, onto something just because it's on the register like that.
Okay, as soon as my clock stops chiming, I think, I think I fall between Jeff and Rick. I, yield to no one in my desire to preserve historic houses in Needham, but that house is extremely compromised, both in terms of its subsequent building history. I'd say the base, probably the main part of the existing structure is 1880 at the earliest, and probably closer to the turn of the century. Even the parts that are historic have been overbuilt, stuccoed. The porch is relatively recent. And then if you look at, even from the photos that were posted in Zillow, there's a lot of damage to the house. There's water leakage and there's other forms of damage. It was a pretty house. It was a very pretty house. But I don't see that any longer. And I'm not seeing a compelling reason to preserve it. I don't see enough historic integrity. I don't see enough preservation of materials. And honestly, looking at the very sparse history, I'm not seeing a narrative that associates it with any significant development or event in the town. We actually have 2 votes that we need to take today, and 1 or potentially 2 votes. Well, 2 votes. The first is whether or not the house is historically significant. And then the second vote is whether or not to go forward with the public hearing. So I think we will start. Can I have a movement? Could somebody please move the first question, whether or not we find the house to be a historically significant asset or an historic asset to the town of Needham?
So moved.
Well, I'll make a move to, I'll make a move into the negative. Can I, if that's,
No. We have 2 distinct questions. The first is the house a historic asset to the town of Needham? And Rose, or Jeff, you're the secretary. Let's see, we need
Okay.
Rick Hardy has moved.
Rick moved.
Yeah. How do we word this so we get a positive, negative?
You need a second, right?
We need a motion first. We need a formal motion.
Well, the motion could be in the positive, right? There's a say, and then we vote, right? So we're
Yeah,
voting
it has to
whether
be
or not-
yes, no question.
Yes.
Yes, so,
So Rick moved to
To your,
determine if,
to
Your-
find the house historically, to designate the house historically significant asset.
to the town. Yeah,
Okay,
that's fine.
Okay.
okay, can I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay.
That
Coming
was
to the
Dawn?
vote, I will make a roll call vote. Don,
Yes,
you find historically significant?
yes.
Okay. Rose,
You want a yes or a no?
yeah.
And boy, have I got several sentences for you. I will
You can
vote.
save some of them for the second half,
I will.
second vote.
Okay, in that case, I will vote for it to be historically significant, and then I will tell you all of my reasons.
Okay. Rick,
Aye.
Jeff,
nay.
Laura,
Aye.
and I vote no. Okay, so the house was found to be historically significant by a vote of 4 to 2? 4 to 2.
Yep.
Okay, so now I need a second motion. And that motion would be whether or not we go forward with the public hearing process, or we decline to go forward and return the permit to the building department. So do I have a motion?
Yes.
Do we want to
Okay,
have
so-
discussion first?
You have this discussion after the.
We
motion.
have to have the motion first, and the motion in the second. So the motion will be
Make the motion to go forward with the public
go
hearing.
forward the public hearing process and consider the possibility of a demolition delay.
Yes.
Okay, do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Second.
Okay, Don Lankwitz, second. Okay, comment. Go,
All right.
Rose.
Now's my chance.
Now's your chance.
Now is my chance. Okay. I really see all of the problems with declaring this building historically significant, but I also recognize what Rick is saying about how we have to make this a public commentary, display, event. Yes, perhaps this building needs to go, but other buildings don't need to go. And I'm only saying perhaps this one needs to go. We need to make ourselves more public in the conversation in Needham so that people understand that this is our heritage. No, not the L. I'm not arguing for that, but I am saying that I think that we need to put a line in the sand somehow and say, we really do care. And I don't know whether it's going forward with this, with the public meeting or not. But it's one way to go.
Okay.
Did that make sense?
Yeah, you sounded conflicted. It's okay. I think we all are.
I am conflicted. I am extremely conflicted. I understand exactly what the Bradleys want to do. But I also agree with Rick that Needham is disappearing. The historical, the buildings on the
I
list.
think that conversation is out of
Wait,
order.
Jeff,
I
let
think it's
let
out of
Rose
order
finish.
to talk about.
Jeff, let Rose finish, please.
No, actually, I was babbling, and I will stop now. I hope that you understand my point, and that is that historical buildings ought to be preserved, period. And I really feel that strongly. Okay.
Okay, Jeff, what did you want to say?
I want people in this committee to think hard about what they're talking about. Okay, we as a historical commission speak greatly about the losses of historic properties here, and lament the losses of truly historic properties, and it pains us. But to talk about that in regard to this property and to vote that it's historically significant because of other properties being lost is irrational. It's displacing our anger and losses of other houses
Jeff,
onto these people, and it's penalizing these owners who, you know, if these people didn't buy this house, a developer would have bought it and put in 2 or 3 houses that would have been spec houses without any attention to any kind of at any kind of
Jeff, we can't know that, and that's not a topic for discussion.
think about what proposals in front of you. That was part of the agenda. But to talk about other houses or other losses, which was, I believe, is out of order, you know, those comments, you know, that you have to look at this house and this discussion as in a vacuum and without any regard to other historic houses, other losses. Look at it for this. Is it historically significant on its own, not because of what other losses that we are having here? So I did strongly disagree with the previous vote, and I think to penalize these people and talking about and have a public hearing, the fact that there isn't anybody here today, you know, speaking to that, and the neighbors will, we know the neighbors will get it'll be an improvement from what is and what could be there from what's be put in front of us. So I feel strongly about that, and I hope that other people would take that into consideration and not penalize these people for doing something, honoring the lot, okay, where, you know, all right, and so I do not think that it's worthy of a public hearing to consider. We're going to ask the neighbors to consider the historical significance of the worst part of the house. Okay, I mean, think about that. And there's nothing historically significant about it when you look at it. All right, there's no architectural details showing from the outside. Right inside, you only know that it's the oldest part of the building, you know, if you look carefully, but there's nothing there to be preserved in any manner. Oh,
Okay,
please think about what you're doing when you vote in regards to this property and not all the others. Okay.
thank you, Jeff. Laura, do you have any comments?
I don't, thank you.
Okay. Rick?
No comment.
Okay. Don?
No comments.
Okay. And I'll just say, we have had to make value judgments in the past. This past year, we had to make a pretty painful decision about whether we were going to pursue the preservation of the Ridge Hill house or sort of, keep our powder dry for the Emery Grover. And that was the decision we ultimately made. We're going to actually have a further discussion, possibly if we have time later in this meeting, about other towns' demolition delay procedures. And some of that consideration is, how does this process, I don't want to say enhance our authority, but how does this process reinforce to the town the fact that we consider these properties carefully? One decision that we have made and have stuck to for a long time was to consider every house on the inventory individually, so that when we did make a decision, it was a considered decision, and that we could go forward and the public could go forward in the confidence that we had a reason for making this decision. I think if we are too arbitrary, we do lose that authority. People say, well, they're just gonna say that every time. So that, so we lose that authority when we do speak to preservation. I truly don't see a lot of this house left. And, if the house had integrity, then I would very much want to see it preserved. I don't think the house has integrity. I don't see what it would be we were trying to preserve in this particular case. I partially agree with Jeff that we have to look at this house and not all the other houses in town. But I also agree with Rick that the preservation and the attitude of preservation is a townwide consideration. It is not a piece by piece by piece inventory. It is a townwide consideration about the value of preservation in the town. And I think if we come across as arbitrary, and if we cannot really justify the reasons for advocating for the preservation or the reasons for putting a delay on the demolition, then we lose the authority we have and we lose the support we have when we do have to fight for the preservation of a house.
Right.
Okay, so we have a move, we have a motion, we have a second. Is there any further commentary? Should we proceed to the vote? Okay, hearing none, we're going to vote. The vote will be whether or not to move forward with the public hearing. A yes means move forward, a no means no. Don?
Yes.
Rose?
No.
Rick?
Nay.
I'm sorry? That was not,
No.
yes? I'm sorry, that's not clear.
That's a no.
No? Laura?
Yes,
Jeff?
No.
And I vote no. What does that tally to?
4-2.
4-2? Okay. The decision then is the motion has not passed. The commission is not going to go forward to pursue the potential demolition delay, and the demolition permit is going to be returned to the building department for Gina and Rob Bradley to go forward with their plans.
Thank you all. We appreciate your thoughtful consideration. We really do.
Preserve that sweet gum. It is a beautiful tree.
I will. And if it makes you feel any better, we're actually considering preserving the barn. No offense to the barn that got moved over there, but the barn currently on the property
Yeah.
looks just kind of beautiful and old and
Solid, very solid.
got
You
it.
have a lot of rabbits on that property, just so you know. Well,
Yeah.
the historical society is right next door, and they raid the garden.
Not that far. It's probably the same rabbits. So anyway, we're thinking about move. We'd have to move it, but we're thinking about we're going to see if we can preserve the barn and move it. So hopefully you'll see that and smile.
Okay. Well, thank you for providing the information that you did. Thank you for coming to the hearing.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Thank
So
you.
I'd love to see the plans when, they get developed.
You're more than welcome.
Of course, yeah, we've got miles to go before we sleep on that, but which is why it's still a mood board. But we'll start to work on it.
I do my walks around Newman, so I'll be, I sort of, walk around the neighborhood on occasions.
I'm
Okay.
sure I'll see you over there.
Okay, so Nick and Gina, we will send a notification of this decision to the building department. So as you go forward, they shouldn't be needing anything further from us.
Okay.
That'd be good.
Okay,
Thank you so much. Have a good
thank you
night.
so much.
Good night.
Bye.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah,
So I'm reading the bylaws and it says that. So what we've decided here tonight is that it is to be preferably preserved, but we've decided on no hearing.
no,
that right?
no, preferably preserved is decided at the hearing.
Oh, what did we decide with our first vote then?
We decided whether or not it was historically significant, and whether to go
Significant,
forward,
okay.
and whether to have a second hearing.
Okay, so there's no second hearing.
There's no second hearing.
So that side kind of moots the first
Yeah,
vote.
yeah,
So now they can just go get a building permit.
yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got it.
Bart, we're out of this process now. And now that our guests are gone, please remember that we are all on a board and need to speak in a civil manner to each other. Where's my agenda?
I
Okay.
apologize if I spoke passionately and if something felt like it wasn't civil. I hope people feel good about, we got to a roundabout way of, I think, doing the right thing. I think we bordered on doing the wrong thing. I feel like I wouldn't have wanted to, displace other feelings of other properties onto this one, and I think we did the right thing. But I was trying to say, when we talk about other properties, other losses, I was just thinking, I don't think that's within the parameters of our discussion. So I wasn't trying to sort of interrupt somebody, but I thought in staying true to the process of what's within the limits of our discussion and not going off on significant tangents that could impact the decision. That's why I was sort of speaking out. And
Okay.
if I hurt somebody's feelings, I apologize.
We always have a sort of big picture, small picture view whenever we do this, and it does, it does affect the overall preservation picture does affect our view of each particular.
We get to
And it has to. And it
we
has,
get to talk, Gloria, we get to talk about the big picture, you know,
Yeah.
when we're discussing, you know, when we're discussing things, you know, amongst as a commission, you know, on a general discussion, and we can go off on tangents. But when we are faced with making a significant vote on a particular property, you know, that I think that we have to be bound by, you know, so those tangents, and, you know, I mean, you know,
well, no, I mean, it's a property within a landscape. You know, it's a property within a historic landscape, and in this particular area, you know, is got more of an intact landscape than most. But I think we should go on to,
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Gloria, I just have one more question. I'm
Yeah.
looking at the bylaws and it says that if it's on the inventory, it automatically is historically significant. So why do we have a first vote on that? I don't
it's
understand that.
not actually automatically historically significant. We've found in a lot of cases, or in several cases, that it was either no longer in the state that it was in when it was put on the inventory, or in a couple of cases put on the inventory in error, in misunderstanding of the
Okay, I'm just reading literally right out of the bylaws, and it says property that is listed in the historical inventory in Needham and is listed or awaiting listing in the National Estate Registers. Property having been associated with historic persons or events, or having been designated by the Needham Historical Commission. That's the definition.
but we did find
So-
it historically significant. By a vote
But
of
why
4.
would we even have a vote on that when it's already listed on an inventory?
because it was found to be historically significant when it was put on the inventory, but then because it's no longer historically significant.
Okay, but that's not what the
found-
bylaws say.
Yeah.
It's not
It's
what
all
they
right, 'cause
say.
we
Read
did
it.
vote it, we did vote that it was historically significant, so we're not outside the parameters of that. We have found, for example, the house on the corner of Oak and Maple was on the inventory, and it turned out to, not only was it at that point literally a falling down ruin, but the ownership history under which it was listed turned out to be false. So we always do review the historic significance prior to going any farther in the process.
Okay.
Because a lot of these went on the inventory more than 40 years ago, or almost 40 years ago. So,
Mhm.
no, almost 50. How long ago was 1976? 86, 96, 2016, 45 years ago. So conditions have changed for a lot of them.
So we're saying it's not historically significant.
No,
then.
we actually said it, we voted it was historically significant. We voted not to take it farther. We're not
Okay, so-
obligated to take it. There are there's sort of two steps. One is whether it's significant at all, and then whether or not we're going to consider putting a demolition delay.
Okay, so then it says if it's found to be significant, there will be a demolition plan review conducted by the Needham Historical Commission.
Which we can back out of any time,
Mhm.
and we just did. We're not required to take this to
Okay,
a
Right.
public hearing if we don't feel it's going to be found preferably preserved. If we don't believe it is preferably preserved.
okay. Okay, I'm just
Okay.
trying to
And-
align this review with what I'm reading in these bylaws. But that's fine. You guys would know better than I am. I'm too new, but I
This
just
was
want to
the pub- this-
understand it.
Right, but this was a public hearing, and there was no one from the, you know, the public here advocating for, you know, more input. So there was no one asking for it to be, to have another open hearing for a discussion of imposing a delay.
Which is not surprising, since it's not this hearing, but the second hearing at which the abutters are notified. So I think you have to be paying pretty close attention to
I guess I don't see the part where you can
Committee
just bypass
agendas.
the public hearing. I don't see that in these bylaws at all. We can talk about it another time if we want, but I'm just reading through and I don't see that opportunity here. And I just don't want some neighbor to come back, at some point to say, hey, wait a second, how is this happening when I'm reading these, I went as a neighbor, read these bylaws and it says there has to be a demolition plan and 45 days. There should be a review at a public hearing. There's nothing in these steps that says we can bypass a public hearing unless, and again, I'm just reading literally from what is in the town bylaws.
I think toward the end, it says that we can stop the process at any point during the 6 months.
I just want, you would know better. I'm new and I'm just reading and I just want to make sure we're okay because it's definitely on the register, right?
No, it was on the
It's on
register.
the inventory.
Yeah.
So it's going to create some discussion among some people, I believe, I would think. That's why I wanted the public hearing because I wanted it to be known and out there and have support for whatever decision there is. So if we just do this in a vacuum and we send it right back to the building permit, the building department, and someone, an abutter or somebody finds out and has some other objection, could they come back and criticize us for not going through this process? That's my question.
I don't believe so. I will look
Okay.
through this again and get back to you. I mean,
Okay.
we'll put that on the agenda for the next meeting. So we have that as a public
Yeah,
discussion.
I would feel better about that. I just,
Okay.
if we just bypass abutters in the public with something that's listed on a register, I think that's an invitation to have
I can talk,
criticism.
I can maybe run it past the town council in the meantime as
Yeah.
well. And we can
I don't know how other people feel. I just makes me a little nervous.
Yeah.
make a note, Rose, for the next agenda.
Okay, yep. And my comment also is that having a lawyer in the group is always wonderful.
Yes.
It is really important.
Who's a lawyer?
Aren't you?
No, I work for a bank.
Oh.
My
well,
son is.
well, well,
We'll call him.
So maybe he
Okay.
got some lawyer genes. Maybe there's some genes in my brain. I don't know.
Okay, yeah, it's getting late, so let's move forward. We do not yet have the minutes for the January meeting.
No, we do not have minutes completed
Okay.
yet for review.
So we will delay that until the next meeting as well. I just put this building department, just wanted to let you know, building department requested a copy of the list. They just wanted to make sure that their records were up to date. So there is no action or anything required. I sent them a list and that's all they needed to know.
Lori,
Don?
did the list include those houses that no longer exist?
Yeah.
Is it annotated on there?
Yeah, the list is annotated and it says whether or not the house has been demolished. Or delisted as one or two cases. So yeah, I just sent them the whole list, but I keep that list annotated so we know which houses are no longer,
And
us.
could I ask a question about procedure? Who lets the building department know?
I do.
You do. Thank you.
I'll draft a note, which I'll copy to all of you.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, forgot to do that.
Okay, I'm going to put the LHD discussion off again till next month because I think that is much too long a discussion for tonight. We've already been meeting for an hour. I would like to begin, however, the discussion about demo delay bylaws.
Yeah.
You all have the spreadsheet that Laura compiled for us, and thank you so much. And
Oh,
also,
sure.
a discussion popped up on the MHC listserv.
Yeah, that's great.
And so I just basically grabbed every response and printed them out. So I really haven't been vetting them, but I did compile them so you could see what is out there. And
Thank you, because I was, for preparation for this meeting, I remember reading that and I couldn't, and I kept looking at for Laura's, I thought that was part of Laura's research, all those conversations.
Well, she
And
was
then I was,
looking at-
and I was searching, Googling, and I was like, I can't find it. I lost it. And,
No,
you know,
I
it was under,
doing,
so I had to search under Gloria's,
yeah, I was doing, Jeff, like towns. I think Rick
yeah,
had a list of what
The-
quote unquote are
yeah.
like towns for us.
Yep.
The
what I
MHC
con-
list is statewide. It's a much more random bag of towns that are, not
Yeah,
necessarily
but
in our area, or they're not towns that I think I would have looked for either. I mean, it's not.
But I
But I
do
thought-
think a common thing is if something's on a register, there's an automatic delay. Like it
Yeah.
shouldn't, like in what I'm seeing is it doesn't even go to historical. It's a delay for 6 months, at least.
Yeah, every town sort of has every town has a different approach. A lot
And
of
then there's the
towns,
age thing.
a lot of towns have automatic triggers, and
Yeah.
I noticed some of the commentary was by my friend over in Medfield, David Temple. They have, I think, a 50-year or something.
Yep.
And, that means, he said, I asked him, I said, how does that work out for you? And he said, basically, they spend so much time just passing through, at this point, a 50-year-old house is a post-war split, and until it's the last house in town, nobody's going to declare a post-war split to be a historic house. And said, in a realistic sense, they go through the same process we do. They have to evaluate each house for the occasion that they get one that they do think should be preserved, that is historic. But then they sort of have to go through hoops to explain why, because they pass through so many of these as rubber stamps. No. Oops, wait, this one, yes. And then you get that sort of, well, you passed everybody else. Why are you picking on me? So
right, we would, that was always my joke about, these post-war splits that popped up, the whole neighborhoods popped up right after the baby boomers. There's nothing historically significant about them. There's no reason to preferably preserve them. They were poorly constructed with poor materials, very fast and all of that until there's the last one.
Until there's none
right?
left.
And,
Yeah.
and right. And then you say, so I think the town should buy one and preserve it under plexiglass, right? Because otherwise we're going to have that conversation tonight of the people going to go, well, you just approved the demolition of 150 of them. And,
Why ours?
how come we're the last one? You're going to penalize us,
Well, see, I think they're historical in the aggregate. The fact that Evelyn Road was all built within a year. If you look at it from the air, we've got this wonderful 1951 picture, and it shows Evelyn Road from the air, and it's the whole loop with a double row of completely identical houses. They were all built the exact same.
That's
And
like the street
actually-
I live on.
That's a historical moment.
Yeah.
That post-war expansion and then sort of instant neighborhood, but in the particular, none of the individual houses has a particular significance. In the aggregate, they're extremely important. So, it's an interesting.
You know what happens though? It gets
approach.
emotional. When we moved from Newton, we had a ranch on a street in Woburn, just a ranch on this street with these big fancy houses. And when we went for the demo delay, half the committee was so stuck on, we can't keep getting rid of these ranches and splits because where are people going to live, right? And my husband was the one who brought up the point and said, that's not this committee's job, unfortunately, right? And that's what was my earlier point before. And so it was close. I mean, we had this ranch is an outbuilding to some big, huge house. It was literally a triangle. I mean, not a triangle. That would be his
Well, that would be
signature.
interesting.
A rectangle of a house that had no redeeming qualities whatsoever. And it was a 3-2 vote. And I know it was that emotion about, preserving affordable housing, but
Yeah, but that wasn't historical commission's.
no, and that's going to be the
Yeah.
same thing.
Yeah,
But I kind of think that if something's on a inventory, there needs to be, I think that should be a trigger. Personally, I don't know how other people feel, at least to review it. I'm not saying not to do anything with it, but at least to review it. And we don't have that.
no. It has its advantages in that, it takes the burden of proof away from us to some extent. But I think that's also the disadvantage, as I said before, if we consider each house on its own merits, we confer some degree of authority to that decision. It's not an
Mhm.
arbitrary decision. It's a decision that, we've made through study and some thought. The other thing is, we've had this discussion numerous times with the select board, who are considering and have been considering the possibility of, making alterations to the demo delay bylaw. And they have taken a pretty firm position that dateline designation is not going to happen.
Mhm. So
Zero
dateline or age?
age.
Age.
Say like every,
Because there are a couple towns that do it by date and they move the date forward.
Yeah, because they're
Do you know
essentially,
what I mean?
we're doing it by age, yeah.
Yeah.
But to
Right,
say that, every house that's 100 years or more, every house that's 50 years or more. I know in Cambridge, that 50-year rule is.
Probably every house.
Well, yeah, it becomes a cudgel.
Yeah.
For university town relationships, not
I
just.
mean,
private,
on its own, I would support one of those, age, date driven determinants. Okay, if we, then like the meeting tonight, all of a sudden one of those little ranches that's deserving of a demolition, and we could easily just say, oh well, just because it was built in 1945, 46, and we could quickly say, not historically significant and be done with it and gone. I don't think it would take too much of our time. And I could support that in that. But one, it will never fly in this town, period. And that's one probably where the selectmen, stand, why they would not, support it on that way as well, because we would all get beat up if we ever, suggested that in this town. And it because we would have to have some earned credibility in that we would not stand in the way of development just because, we could, and we didn't take each house on its merit. And I think,
but then once you say we're going to make this arbitrary line, but then we're going to essentially ignore it all the time. It's a real blow to your credibility.
But that's
Yeah,
why you start with the inventory. I
Yeah.
mean, if you start there, then you take a really hard look and forget about tonight. I know tonight may be not the best example, but you have an inventory. They're there for a reason. At least you give pause to those. If you don't want to go age-wise, I mean, I think the first step would be the inventory, whether local or national,
Yeah.
or whatever inventory. And then age is, I mean, listen, this town is very developer friendly, very,
Yeah. Yes,
as we know.
As we know.
So, I understand you have to take baby steps if and when we ever want to do anything. I don't know how other people feel, but I mean, I do think if you've got something listed on an inventory, I think everyone should have time to take a pause on it. To me, that's step one versus an age limit.
Yeah, and I think realistically, getting to that local historic district stage will not only give us a more powerful tool, but actually give us, give the reasons for preservation a little bit more, make it a little bit more obvious, or make it a little more part of the public discussion. When you have to bring something to town meeting to put it under this extra layer of protection, you really have to have a strong argument, and you have to make that argument publicly. And it's not, 6 or 7 of us, talking to, well, there's, hello, whoever you are out there that's not part of this meeting and watching us. There are 9 people on this call tonight. 6 of us, 2 people on the town hall staff, and 1 other individual watching the meeting. And if we had to bring a decision to town meeting, we would have to have, our details nailed down tight. And if we, succeeded in getting that LHD designation, we would have done so because we had a very strong case, and we have done it in a public forum that elevates the importance of the preservation discussion, the preservation decision.
Yeah, I don't want to be.
That is the place we want to get to. Yeah.
I don't want to be misinterpreted, thinking that I would be advocating for an age-driven or date-driven category. I'm not, I said in a vacuum maybe, but I'm not advocating for that, because 1, I know it wouldn't fly, and 2, I don't think that's where we want to go. I think that, like you said, the local historic district would afford us so much more credibility in preservation, because it like you said, Gloria, it would be inclusive. It would be inclusive of the people who want that preservation, whether it be the neighborhood, or example like Mo, who would do it as an individual, 1 house, so on. And I think that town meeting and town folk could get behind that, but there would always be this level of distrust of the commission making decisions that potentially could be arbitrary, and why are they so empowered as such? So I look forward to us having the local historic discussion, and not just amongst ourselves. I really look forward to having it within the community, because also what came up in discussions earlier this evening, that is a time when we will get to educate the town about the importance of historic preservation, and we could do it on a larger scale rather than attending to 1 property, as I hope that it might educate people. So I look forward to us moving, when we're getting to that point, and having that debate publicly, with hopefully many people pay attention, because it's always frustrating to have a party and no one shows up.
But I think too, reverting back to my days as an archaeologist, landscapes are important. And communities form and live in landscapes that they construct, in the various ways that are meaningful to their social and economic and subsistence lives. Like the construction of Evelyn Road, if you look at areas of town and the way areas of town have developed, and the importance of specific areas, and this has come up with the Warren Street folks, for example, that's a broad example of the post-railroad transformation of the town. I mean, that area has an aggregate significance that supersedes the significance of any particular structure. That just happens to be a particularly well-preserved neighborhood, and the structures are old, so they have their own histories. But it's harder to make individual case arguments than it is to make aggregate case arguments. And I think the LHD bylaw would let us contextualize these buildings within the development of the town, within the history of the town. That would give them, that would make it more evident to people why they're significant. And we're not just saying, well, because it's old. It's more able to make that, determination. One of the things that struck me about this MHC discussion is the towns that have 6-month delays are uniformly in agreement that it's not long enough and want to move to 12. And the towns that have 12 are pretty much in agreement that it's not long enough and want to move to 18. So, and for Jeff, and was it Rose also, who we went to that seminar that Chris Skelly did a couple of years ago. And, this is the guy who manages, helps design, and mentors, every town's demolition delay bylaw. And his opinion is the demolition delay bylaw is probably the least useful way of managing historic preservation. He does not consider an effective means. Nobody who actually has one likes it. I mean, they like the concept of it. They like the effort to promote preservation, but they don't think that their law works particularly efficiently. We don't think our law works particularly efficiently. There are times when it does. And when people ask me, I point out that the 2 buildings that I work in every day are both rescues from builders that, did not want to wait the 6 months. But, by the same token, 2 buildings down the street, as we know, were not successfully rescued because the builders simply said, "Oh, wait." So it's a blunt instrument. It's not a particularly effective instrument. And I didn't see anything in either the MHC discussion or in the data that Laura was able to gather that really gave me an aha moment. If we were doing this, things would be fine. And I think really what it sort of showed us is that every town tries to find some way to solve this problem, but nobody really has. Maybe if we could get all the way to 18 months or 20, there are towns that are looking for 24-month delay now. Whether they'll get it or not is an open question, but you really have to push it out very far down the timeline before you can make it such an impediment that people are willing to try and find an alternative.
And you know what the unintended consequences of that would be, right?
You would be, I mean, every time.
All you would get would be, the kind of developers with deep pockets like the Silva Corporation that took down Jack Coxwell's house, right? And you would penalize some creative, custom houses or even nice spec houses, to be built on that, but by people who, are at the margins. It would squeeze out people like the Bradleys. They could never afford to wait a year or 2 years. So
They could. They bought that house with cash. I think they could wait.
All right, but would they? What I mean?
I know, but I mean,
you know what I mean?
think,
So if there was a 2-year delay, in comes a developer who says, "Oh, I could squeeze 3 houses on that lot," by some.
well, also though, you have the issue of homes just sitting there. To remember this issue we had with the other property, sitting there, just sitting with no attention paid to it, nobody living in it, trash
Right.
building up, leaves. We don't want that either.
Another
Right.
unintended
Right.
unintended consequence.
Right.
Well, what would also happen is not only would it attract deep pocket builders who could afford to essentially let the house sit and deteriorate for 2 years. But it would make the sale of the house very difficult for the homeowner, because nobody else would be able to buy it other than, and if a builder wasn't, if your lot wasn't large enough for him to build, a couple of units on, or it was not a place where he thought he could maximize the profit, especially given that he'd have to wait 2 years, the house would just go unsold. So I think, it's one thing to say, 24 months in this sort of vacuum of the ideal world where, there's plenty of cash flow and buyers and sellers and people who want to preserve a historic home, but I think the repercussions are probably more negative than positive.
Right. We would be penalizing our constituents, because it would make such home ownership complicated a transition. And
We'd be discouraging people from joining the inventory because we'd be putting such a barrier in the way.
Right. And if we had the local historical districts, again, that doesn't disregard our constituents, and it works out in ways that give historic preservation some credibility and some able to work through things, and it includes the town.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you raised something interesting, and I don't know if you're talking about at Evelyn Road, and the congregate kind of look, and I think that, whether we want to preserve it in restrictions, or do we want to preserve it, like you said, that picture, a historical study and some ways of documenting that. And I almost think about that's almost like a state responsibility, because there are so many of those kind of little communities, Evelyn Road and every town that had open space, like Needham. Needham's farming community, in the 1900s. And so it had a lot of space come the war. So neighborhoods could go boom, pop up. They grabbed that open space in Framingham, anything that was open like that. So shouldn't the state, in some ways, and we could contribute to that. So, and maybe if we had a little model.
The state is not, I just tell you right now, the state is not going to be doing that. That's why it's one of the reasons that they have handed the historic preservation responsibilities over to the towns. They can't vet. They would have to learn the significance of every town to know why a neighborhood like that, is significant. But this goes back to something we had discussed in earlier times about non-delay based historic designations, designating neighborhoods as, for their historic significance, not to impose some sort of, delay or restriction, but simply to convey information.
I like that. If there was a street,
this is the Evelyn Road post-war baby boom development historic district or something like that, and just
if there was a sign like that and said like 40 houses were built within 1 year, in this neighborhood, a testament to American ingenuity and responding to, quick growth. And maybe there'll be other streets that say, hey, can we get one of those signs? Because our street was also part of that. And, make people proud of their, the historical place, even if their houses, their individual house isn't historically significant, their group of houses is. They're part of that historical significance. And maybe if we got signs like that.
And for all people say they are not interested in history, whenever I put out a column that touches on something recent, the one about Reservoir Street, or the one about Lindbergh Ave a couple weeks ago. I'm trying to get a picture up for you, so I've now, my screen, there we go. Okay. You know, I get huge feedback. So people are not, you know, quote, interested in history, but they are totally interested in the history of their neighborhood, the history of, you know, the house they grew up in, that kind of thing. So there is a certain amount of leverage that we have, you know, to be able to bring people in. I'm just going to put this on screen real quick because it is such a cool picture. I don't know, can y'all see that? Wave to yourselves, you're all there.
Yes, now we can.
Okay, so it's an aerial view of essentially exit 19, which is here. So this is a labeled one, so I was sending it to somebody. So Muzzy Ford is right there. This is Gould Street. This is Highland Avenue, the train tracks. Coke is over here. So this is Evelyn Road.
Yep.
You can see it's just bang, 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 one after another. And if you look up here, closer to the top, when Reservoir got diverted, because Reservoir basically did this right across where the highway is now. When that got taken down, Hunting was built to replace it. And so you could see Long Hunting, Woodbine Circle, Fay Lane, all those little streets. You could just see one after another, row after row after row. And this part sort of in the foreground is the old, this is Webster and Highland, Webster, Highland, that area. You can see, you know, houses are built and they more or less conform to the street and they're not totally regularly spaced. And it's a little more organic the way that sort of lower right-hand corner has grown up. But immediately after the war and the need for housing and the growth, town population doubled in between 1940 and 1960. So there's a huge demand for housing. So you can see these neighborhoods just pop up whole. And, you know, so that is a story that we can tell through this LHD process. And I think it is a story we can tell just sort of randomly, you know, sort of make this information available and prove it. But that's a project for another day.
You know, I'm right. You know, I mean, a local historic district could be labeled a historic district without any constraints.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, right? People signed on it and said they were owners of a house in that local historic district. But that didn't embody any demolition delay or restriction of, renovations. You know, wow. They might.
Well, then I think if it was a formal local historic district, it would have to conform to, we would have probably a consistent, neighborhood. I prefer neighborhood preservation district. I think we would have a sort of a consistent rubric across those, or then you get back to this why them and not us issue. But we could provide this information and, you know, maybe use some of our $1,000 a year to make some signs, essentially without anybody else's, it would not require a town meeting. We'd probably have to go to the, design review board with the sign. But other than that, unless the neighborhood objected to us putting up a sign, I think we'd have, a fair amount of leeway. It's 9 o'clock, folks. We have been doing this for an hour and a half, and I think Daphne and Clay are probably really wanting to go home because they have to do this every night. So please think about, certainly think about the next steps in the local historic district process. Don sent out that timeline, and if you don't still have it, I'll send it around again. Start thinking about what our timeline should be, what the steps should be to get us forward in this process, because otherwise, it's never going to happen. And the other thing is, please think about, you know, what you see in that, in those two documents about demo delay, and if there is, you know, should we, can we, and do we have any good ideas for moving that process at all? Or should we simply, you know, just it is what it is and go for neighborhood preservation district system, you know, full speed ahead, maybe as a better alternative.
And we're gonna follow up on whether,
And we'll follow
We should
up,
have a-
yeah, so those two will be on
On
the agenda for next time. The minutes of the meeting will be on the agenda for next time, and follow up with the town council about the historic designation will be on there for next time. To get that
just
right,
whether we should have a
I'm not
public
writing anything.
hearing on that or not.
Yeah.
Uh,
Okay.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to let you know you've had one member from the public who has been in attendance at your meeting.
Yep,
Yes.
Just wanted to let you know.
I did know,
Was
I
that,
did know.
is that person identified? Is that person's name identified?
Yeah, first name.
Yeah, by first name, it's Mark, but I just wanted to let you know that you had a member of the public.
Yeah, I did notice there was a ninth person on the attendee, tally. Okay, we are all done then? I'd like to motion to adjourn this meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second,
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Good night, everybody.
Good
Thank you,
night.
Daphne. Thank you.
Thank
Cliff.
you.
Good night.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye, guys.